More news from Jazz camp as the Jazz move to their final two-a-day of the camp. Scrimmage on Saturday. News around the NBA, including update on Royce White and Jimmer. And the Utes get hammered at home by the Trojans. It's all coming up on this edition of Tip-Off. Scrimmage, 4 o'clock, Saturday, Energy Solutions Arena. Be there. I'll be there around 3. Doors open around 3:15, so get there early. We can hang out and chat. Boom. I used to do a Q&A. I didn't do it last year. I don't know if I'm doing it, so we'll just hang out and chat. Boom. Hope everyone's doing all right. I know Ute fans aren't today. I will have a thought on why you shouldn't be. No, it's a different world, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Yesterday, the Jazz scrimmaged in the morning. They practiced, ran through some sets. There was a really interesting moment. They were running through some early offensive sets in the practice, and you can see the topic of what I've talked about with pace, where they're trying to get the ball up the floor early and get into some early sets and move and get everything started early. And Hayward got the ball on the right wing, and Ty said, was kind of explained to Gordon, you have a tendency to go too quickly on the pick and roll so that you come across off that pick before everybody else has been able to move. He says, as quickly as we're coming down, you got to get it. You got to give it a little pause just so everybody else can get in their spot. The pick can get there, get set, and you can go. This assumes whoever's setting the pick actually sets a pick in the modern NBA. And then, everyone kind of paused for a second, and what Hornacek came over and said, hey, what happens when you pause for that second, Gordon, what you're trying to avoid is you don't want that guy to come up and ice you. In other words, push you to the baseline because you're trying to come back to the middle. He says, so, feign a pass as though you're going to someone on the baseline, then swing it back through and come off the pick the other way. That fake pass will force the defender kind of jump out that way instinctually and go. It was a neat kind of moment where you saw the value Hornacek has from playing the game as much as he does. You also could kind of see what the Jazz are trying to do. That they got teams are icing you to the side, and we saw in the San Antonio series, we saw in some others, that whenever someone kind of gets you to that side, you're dead. And the Jazz are trying to get into an early offense and keep the ball coming toward the middle a good deal offensively, and then let things flow off that. We'll see how it works. The other one that's really interesting is Millsap, Mike Sanders, Sidney Lowe are working through catching the ball at the elbow, and how you pivot through depends on whether the defender can actually get on you. I was talking to Jamal while it was going on, and Jamal showed me, and it was interesting that if I can't really explain it without standing up and giving you, but if you catch and kind of swing it through the ball through, and it's almost like it's not quite a reverse pivot, but you open up toward the middle, you're able to get some space. Where if you do it the other way as a defender, I can stay up on you and probably get an elbow. I probably get an elbow in the face, and then it's a charge on you. Not pleasant, but luckily I was short enough I didn't get it from Jamal. And it was just, just those little teaching things are going on. That's what training camp is about, those kind of details. And it was interesting to see those. Gordon is continually playing well. Yesterday's scrimmage, I haven't heard the whole report. I think Jamal's team did some winning again. Jamal really passing the ball very well in camp. But Gordon continues to be assertive and aggressive and going at it a little bit more and trying to take it himself a little bit more, and seems to have been very good. His body, maybe he's a little younger, he's bouncing back better. Kind of Ty was commenting, his body's bouncing back faster from one day to the other than maybe some of the other guys. There's two or three other storylines that are developing that are pretty obvious to me. One, people are very impressed by Marvin Williams. I've continually mentioned this, but they're impressed by two things on him. One is just his natural shooting, but also one or two dribbles. His base is just fabulous. And when he comes up and shoots, everything's fundamental. Universally, everybody seems to be thinking he is the best shooter on the team right now. I've heard that from more than one person. So we'll see. Come out to the scrimmage, you get to see Marvin for the first time. I've this whole time been more excited about Marvin than Mo or Randy, and I think Marvin's a 30-minute a night player, which, things are pretty interesting. We talked about it yesterday. Bill Oram had it up in his piece, which he did a nice job on. And, it gets down to it. We just have a lot of guys, and there's going to be, as one player said to me, there's going to be some guys hot on the bench this year, and there's just no debate about it. Guys, there's a lot of guys, whether it's going to be Jamal or Earl who's not getting time at the point, whether it's Berksey or Foy who's probably not getting as much time as he wants there, whether it's Millsap, Favors, or Jefferson, whoever's not, guys are going to be hot on the bench. It's going to be a dance for a little while to figure out how this thing comes together, how everybody gets their time, how guys aren't pissed off. It's a problem that, frankly, every team in the NBA has that doesn't have a really clearly defined pecking order of stars. Denver's going to have it a little bit this year with that roster. JaVale McGee is going to want to play. Mozgov's going to play. Costa's going to want to play in their center position. They have Andre. They have Lawson. They have Chandler. They have Iguodala. They've got great depth as well, so they've got a lot of issues. The Warriors probably have a little bit of this. They got 4 guys competing for a small forward position, and Davon Green and Harrison Barnes, the rookie, Richard Jefferson, and Brandon Rush. May have enough injuries that they're all right, but all these teams that don't have a clearly defined pecking order. Minnesota, frankly, is probably going to have a little bit of this issue on how they deal with it. Because the minute you don't have that pecking order, this is what happens, and it's better to be deep than to be shallow. But I think you're ignorant if you don't think there'll be some sort of feistiness, and you want that. The universal thing the coaches have been talking about yesterday and the day before about the scrimmages is, someone said to me yesterday, well, there was a lot of cussing and there was a lot of yelling at guys about bad passes and mistakes because guys want to win. So that's a positive. I mean, I guess it seems weird if you had anything else, but there is a level of, that this is creating this competition of guys and creating a competition around that. Mo Williams, I'm going to talk to Ty about this today. It's kind of a touchy subject because Ty doesn't want to be negative about anyone else, but here's what's becoming, this is all my supposition, but one thing is that Devin and Ty's relationship last year was pretty rocky. Devin was the one who shared that at the end of the year, and maybe it was more rocky than we realized. And to that, Ty just seems so excited to have Mo Williams, to have someone playing the game and expressing his points of view and being a conduit of his thoughts on the floor and playing the game the way he wants to. That is the other takeaway, that when Ty talks about Mo, and Ty's been very careful when he got specifically asked, I won't talk about other players, I won't compare players. He won't do it. So I'm making this up, but it feels that way to me, that there's this level right now where Ty just finally, I think, is a head coach with a full training camp for the first time and has a point guard who he has some connection to. I mean, remember, Devin came to the Jazz in the first half of the year. Devin was with the Jazz after the Dare trade. He was terrible. So the Jazz come into a shortened training camp last year, and then I'm not sure Ty has a great deal of confidence in Devin. Devin doesn't play very well. Remember, Ty kind of benches him a few times early in the year, and that relationship just never gelled. I'm not putting blame, but you can just feel the difference that Ty feels right now having Mo. I thought the interesting quote he made the other day was he said he's very vocal. He communicates a lot on the court in a good way, which contrasts those people who, and I'm not saying he's saying Devin, but it was a clear comment, in a good way. Everybody wants to know about Favors. That's what everyone, I know the fan base is ready for Derek, and I will tell you, that's not what I'm getting. Now, I've not been watching a lot of it. A lot of this is secondhand. A lot of this is talking to players. I'm not getting much on Derek. There's not a wow factor going on with Derek. The comment I had this year was that I hoped that Derek would come to camp and remove all doubt that he had to play 30 to 35 minutes a night. I would say I have not heard that yet. I think he's still playing well defensively. His jump shot does not sound. I'm not hearing anywhere that it's vastly improved. It's still probably got some fundamental problems with it. I'm not sure whether his back to the basket. Haven't seen yet whether his back to the basket game, which really was not a strength of his last year, has taken that step. He's a defensive savant. He's unbelievable defensively, and that's where this team's got to try to get to. Top 10 defensively if it's going to be a top 4 team in the Western Conference, and he's clearly the key to that. But he's got some responsibility that he's got to be able to play well enough offensively and do some of those other things if he's going to be, instead of being a 30 or if he's going to be, he's got to get better and some of the fundamentals offensively to be a 30 to 35 minute a night player instead of a 25 to 30 minute player. That's going to be the difference for him. And I haven't heard negatively, but I haven't heard the other. Like, there has not been this murmur coming out as there have been about some of the other guys and some of the other things going on. Like, oh my gosh, Derek's unbelievable right now. There's been a little bit about that about G. People are very impressed by Marvin's skill set. Ty, as I said, seems just ecstatic about Mo. And the other guy who's getting a lot of accolades is Cantor. I think we have to put that in perspective, that he just looks dramatically different than he did yesterday. And some of the positive comments I get from people about Cantor have a level of sarcasm to them. Hey, he even passed out of the post a few times, which he did not do for the entire year. He's finishing around the rim instead of getting a shot blocked 3 times. I mean, we're having fun, and there's kind of this little joke to that one, but Cantor does look better. He's moving much better. The lack of weight has allowed him to be quicker. It evidently has allowed him to get up more. I had a funny exchange with Tony Jones of the Salt Lake Tribune yesterday, who said to me, is he above the rim? And I kind of was like, I'll wait to see that myself before I report that he's above the rim. But so there's a lot going on. I think the bigger picture on all of it is the camp is very competitive. The battles are going on are fought hard. The games are being played to win. You aren't having guys take time off just to rest, knowing that they have minutes. Those are the things that are going to allow the camp to move forward. And then starting Saturday, you guys get a look on the 6th, and Monday I'll tell you what I see from Golden State on a non-TV broadcast, and a week from Friday, a week from today, first home game against Oklahoma City. So should be a great deal of stuff to talk about and see. I look forward to bringing it to you. If you get a chance today, by the way, I sent out a link on this. Stitcher Radio is doing a contest for the best podcasts. And if you could nominate us, I know it sounds really arrogant and self-serving, but when you guys follow the show and you guys listen to the show and the numbers go up and we get nominated for awards like this, it actually makes a big difference on how guests I can get, people react to the show, frankly, how just everybody, my bosses, everybody. So it's important. If you could just take a minute, nominate it, then when it's time to vote, I'll remind you and vote and get us in the running. I don't know what we can, I don't doubt our little army of people, but I don't know what we're capable of. But getting nominated would be really big, I think, for the podcast and just kind of hopefully what we're trying to get done here. A few NBA notes. Jimmer supposedly more assertive, more talkative with his teammates. Keith Smart was very positive in that regard. Royce White, who's dealing with an anxiety disorder, joins the team on Monday, and he will be busing to the games this year, probably overnight, and some of them will be tough, and I don't know how he's going to make all of them, but the team is being absolutely supportive, which I just tip my hat to the Rockets for. They've always been a good organization, and they're showing that. All right, BYU, Utah State tonight. Obviously, I think what's going to be interesting is the early energy and attitude of each team. Utah State is coming into this one obviously to prove a point, win the Beehive Boot, be the best team in the state. This is as big. This is their last really big game of the year in some fashions, and they're coming. And I think if you were listening to 1280 The Zone yesterday, Riley Jensen and Steve Tate had a very good conversation about Gary Anderson's defensive philosophy, where he tries to find what they were calling the pigeon, the weak spot on the team, and then he just plows at it the whole time. And I think what will be curious to see is, one, trying to watch the game and figure out what the pigeon is, and two, to see Brandon Doman react to that. I need to see something out of Brandon Doman, frankly, as an offensive coordinator for BYU, to let me garner a little more confidence in him. And depending on, I think if it's recognized, I think that's where Riley versus Taysom Hill is a big difference, is that Riley probably can make the adjustment and work with it. I'm not sure that Hill can in that way. The offensive line at BYU to me has been a disappointment frankly, for about 5 or 6 or 7 years. Every year we talk about how good it's going to be, and then every year as the year goes on, it's not improved. And we've seen that with individual players who we thought were early first-round draft picks, the Reynolds kids and things like that, who then slide through, and then they're good enough to make the roster, but clearly when people are watching film, they're not wowed by it. And that, to me, has been very disturbing of why that's happened with BYU and where that's going on. I believe BYU offensively should be an Elisa pound the football team with occasional big plays out of the passing game. And I'd like to see that tonight from BYU. Uh, Defensively, they're just terrific, and they have been, and it will be. There's no reason to believe Utah State's going to be able to cause them any problems, and that basically nobody's been able to cause them a great deal of problems. They haven't played a really fabulous offense yet, but their defense is very good. Chucky Keaton's ability to run has always been something that makes the game on BYU 11 on 11, and then in turn makes BYU have a little bit of a hard time. And I wouldn't be surprised if there might, keep an eye on, watch if there's a short established passing game or some things that try to exploit one or two people on BYU's defense. And I don't know who those are. Maybe they aren't exploitable because that defense is better, faster, stronger, quicker than it has been. To Utah and USC, Ute fans are obviously going to be despondent. This year, I feel very disappointed for Ute fans because I feel like the preseason. How do I? This is where you're better if you have a monologue prepared and you've worked it through. When I used to do Locked On Sports, that monologue took like 3 hours to prepare. Here, I just come out and talk. I felt like the off season was a Mountain West Conference off season. There was just this insane ignorance to. There was an insane kind of lack of self-evaluation of the weaknesses and problems that the team could have and how they would be exploited. And I thought it was just a shot back to the Mountain West where you have those problems, but you just beat teams anyway. You simply were just good enough and better than Colorado State's and New Mexico's and Air Force's, and you beat them. And I get when you're in the Mountain West Conference, you blow those schools up to believe they're good enough, but don't kid yourself. Air Force, which was the third or fourth best team in the Mountain West every year, would go 1-9 in the Pac-10 every year. I mean, seriously. Particularly if the Pac-10 ever prepared for them. They'd be outmanned at every position. It's just the reality. And so the idea that Utah was going to come into this thing, and it was the fact that the local media kind of did it was, I thought, reverting back to the Mountain West, and I thought that the national media did it was a great sign of respect to Kyle Whittingham and the University of Utah. But it was really kind of craziness. And how far away Utah is and the task that's at hand is becoming more clear. This is not because anyone's doing anything wrong. Kyle's still the right guy. I thought Brian had a very good game yesterday I thought he showed a real feel for what, with his deficiencies, what he was trying to do against a team that was better than him. But the reality for Utah right now is you've played 6 home games. You're 2-4 in those home games. You've gotten blown out 3 times, and you've lost to Colorado. I mean, this is tough, and Star is awesome, but boy, when you have guys that aren't as good as the other guy across from you at numerous positions, it's really obvious, whether it's on the offensive line or, the thought I had last night, and someone probably will refute this. I haven't, really analyzed it numerically, but this is my feel. Do you remember when Devontae Christopher was a big play wide receiver? Like in the Mountain West, I felt like Devontae was this big play wide receiver. You could get him the ball on the slant, and he's not. In this conference, the guy who's guarding him is as good an athlete, if not better than he is every single time. And I think and so he catches and rarely makes another play. Utah was running these slants last night, and that's what they should run, and that's where I liked it. I mean, Riley and Steve Tate did a great job on talking about the short passing game. I thought that's what Utah ran. But USC's got 4 helmets on it every time. They're that fast. They're that quick. And this isn't I'm not trying to. I don't know what I'm trying. I guess I'm not criticizing Utah. I think this is the reality of what Utah was embarking upon, and I just think we all got lost along the way of what the journey and how difficult it would be. The team had some success at the end of last year, some, but I mean, a Washington State team. They won at Washington State, which any win on the road's good, but that was tough to get done, and then lost to Colorado. I mean, it wasn't as though there was a big margin there, and those were the two worst teams in the conference last year. The and then this year, similar to the beginning of last year, have gotten hammered a few times. So I just think the reality is this is going to take more time. They're going to be a middle of the pack, Pac-12 team in a few years, but I don't feel like that they're there yet. The quarterback situation has to become better. That's obvious, but that's unnerving because, as I said earlier, I think they've only had two quarterbacks, and I'd have to go back, and I'm assuming Scott Mitchell was that one of them, but I'm not sure who would have been top-end quarterbacks in the Pac-12 for a year. And so that's a huge change. It's just a monumental change. And it was obvious last night. That game wasn't close at all. And USC's good, but they're not great. They lost to Stanford, who's not that great, who lost to Washington, right? I mean, that's the essence of what is being embarked upon. So I guess here's what I would leave you with. I get it sucks. This is really what we should have expected, but no fan ever would want to expect this. You have the right guys leading the program in Kyle and Kalani and Brian. Your recruiting is going to get better. You're going to be able to compete at a better level than getting run your last two games. But the conference is brutal, and you're going to have, 8-5 is in a bowl game is going to be a great year, and that's a huge quantum jump from what we're used to. Okay, hope you agree with that. If not, you'll let me know.